carbon. It's helped build everything we have. But to keep moving forward, we need to leave carbon behind. At Standard Chartered, we believe money can be a force for good. So we're partnering with our clients to transition to clean energy where it's needed most. It's just one of the ways we're creating a brighter, carbon-free future. We're Standard Chartered, and we're here for good.
Thank you, Mia and Kevin. A very good morning to everyone, and welcome to Marine Money London 2022. Standard Chartered Bank has been a proud partner with Marine Money Singapore for over a decade now, and this year we've taken our relationship to the next level. We are here in London with them, in the very heart of shipping, and we will soon be in summers in New York. I sincerely welcome all of you who are attending this conference in person and who are watching us live on video. I also hope that I see some of you later in summer. Climate change is the greatest structural challenge facing the world today, and addressing it will require humanity's greatest ever collective effort. Net zero is non-negotiable. IPCC, in its 2022 report, highlighted the irreversible changes that have taken place due to climate change and warns that humanity has a very small window to react, and that window itself is closing very fast. However, encouragingly, 2/3 of global GDP has some sort of net zero ambitions, and over 20% of 2,000 world's largest publicly listed companies have had similar commitments. However, we need real conversations about the challenges of net zero and urgent action to be taken to this transition. In line with this, Standard Chartered Bank released a just-in-time report last week. The report talks about transition finance to a just net zero. The report highlights some of the key points. If emerging markets continue with their existing climate policies that they have today and transition investments, we are likely to see a catastrophic global temperature increase of at least 3 degrees by 2100. To combat this, emerging markets will need additional $94.8 trillion to make sure that we get in time to net zero and thereby get in time to the global warming goals. And to attract this investment of this magnitude, we need a fairer transition financing model. A model where public and private sectors work together, a model where the developed world partners with the emerging markets to fund this gap. And to this end, Standard Chartered has pledged $300 billion to green and transition financing in accordance with our transition finance network, and of course, shipping will be a core part of it. This preamble perhaps pivots us nicely to the theme of today's conference. The environment is everything in shipping decision-making. Growing up, while scientists had already warned us about the climate changes that were coming, we thought it was for the next generation, frankly. Fast forward to today, the world is going through rapid changes in environment. We've got flash floods, heat waves, droughts, floods, heat storms. The future that climate change scientists actually predicted 30 years ago is now, today. And guess what? We are that generation. The IPCC published an extremely powerful report recently. It had a good news and a bad news. The bad news, even if all carbon cutting policies that governments had put in place by end of 2020 and the transition investment that are associated with it are successfully implemented, the world will still be warmer by 3.2 degrees more than the 1.5 target that we have already set. Well, there's a good news. The good news is that we have a chance to correct it. But it comes with a caveat being that these efforts cannot be incremental. They have to be transformational. This is now or never for net zero. And to keep to the pathway of 1.5 degrees, all carbon emissions from everything that you do, you consume, you produce, need to rapidly need to increase or need to go to the peak by 2025 and then rapidly decrease to set us to the target of net zero by 2050. Now, put it in the maritime context. Current IMO 2050 regulations have been set which say 50% carbon reduction by 2050. We all know that. The aim of bringing down 920 million metric tons of CO2 that the industry emitted in 2008 to about 460 million metric tons to CO2 by 2050. These targets were set in 2018 by the IMO, and they are due for their first review in 2023. And it is clear that the current targets may just not be enough. We as a bank are building upon methodologies and global standards that include the SBTI, which is Science-Based Targets Initiative, NZBA, which is the Net Zero Banking Alliance and Partnership for Carbon Accounting Financials. We are also working with large independent consultants to see how we can set new targets. And in fact, we look forward to our industry leaders sitting down with them in Copenhagen, probably in the week of 26th, under the Poseidon Principles to brainstorm this further. Well, I was in Marine Money just 6 days ago, like I said, and I met a lot of your colleagues, all industry leaders, who sent a very strong message relating to this. Few of the key points I would like to share with you now. Do what is right, not what is convenient. Despite the worst markets on record in 2021, AET invested in dual fuel engines and ammonia technology for their tanker fleet. Equitable is not same as equal. Those with the broadest shoulders should carry the most weight. Approximately 60% of the world ship owners fall under the SME, which is the small and medium enterprise category. So it is on to the larger corporations with the deepest pockets to set the agenda and drive this transitional change. Banks and financial institutions weren't spared that day. Decarbonization is a team sport. Knowledge partnership is absolute key, especially with respect to R&D. For instance, companies who have carried out trials on alternative fuels should actually go ahead and share with everybody so that the same efforts are not duplicated, which is not the case right now. That brought us to first collaborate to create, then compete to grow. Collaboration is absolutely crucial. The charterers, owners, financiers, regulators, all have to band together to face this existential crisis, and if they exist, then they compete. Amidst all of these conversations along the lines of ESG, let's not forget that the world and our industry is not spared with at least two critical challenges that are there in front of us. One, with the world trying to barely come out of pandemic, and the second, evolving and disrupting and disturbing geopolitical situation in Europe. My deepest sympathies for those who've lost their loved ones in COVID, and also to those who have been negatively impacted by the recent conflict. 1 in 7 seafarer is either Russian or Ukrainian, and you and I can't see their plight. I was in Marine Money, and there were so many heartwarming stories that were shared, and one of them really struck chord with me. It was a senior Russian officer, maritime officer, who gave away his summer Baltic house to the crew members' families who were Ukrainians. I'm an ex-seafarer, a very proud one, and my heart swelled with pride when I heard this story. This is what we are capable of as a fraternity. On to the more commercial aspects of COVID and conflict. The former led to the disruption perhaps in the logistical supply chain, while the latter created disruption in the energy supply chains. Commodity prices skyrocketed, rising interest rates, potential shortage of seafarers stemming out of the conflict. We are perhaps looking at a world of hyperinflation. With all these broad themes in mind, let us proceed with today's agenda. Amidst all this uncertainty that I have just explained, we have Standard Chartered's geopolitical strategist, Philip, and Seward & Kissel's Bruce, who will be assisting us in navigating these macroeconomic and geopolitical unknowns and setting the stage. We will then have Gaurav Mulwani, the regional head of shipping finance for Europe and Americas for Standard Chartered, moderating a panel which basically talks about how environment is everything in decision making. We have an array of esteemed speakers, ex-colleagues, friends, industry leaders, who will then segue into various themes, mainly around ESG, but also the other topics that I just narrated. I look forward to an engaging day of debate, discussions, and analysis. And with that, I think I should hand over the stage to the experts. Thank you all again for joining us. Real pleasure seeing you. Thank you.